Square Enix's official Twitter account, or X account, actually posted a one-word update or tease or reference, whatever you want to call it, to Final Fantasy X just the other day. And this one-word reference was honestly enough to hype people up, get them talking about the franchise, get them talking about whether or not there would be a third entry for Final Fantasy X, or a remake, or a prequel, or whatever. And that word was just Yuna. Now, at face glance, I think that this seems like a nothing burger. You know, it's just, they're tweeting, they're just trying to get attention on their stuff, they're trying to get attention back on their classic characters, especially because while they are doing well, there are definitely groups of fans that are not nearly as impressed with their modern outings as their classic ones. For me, it really depends. I think Star Ocean, used to be a little better than it is now, but the Star Ocean Second Story R remake was good. I think that there's a lot of abandoned Square or Square Enix titles, and I think that with Final Fantasy, they're just wildly different than they used to be, especially with Final Fantasy VII Remake. But we do know a lot of different things about the state of Final Fantasy X. One of those is that there was a plot written for Final Fantasy X-3, and that was not made, although it could eventually become something after Final Fantasy VII Remake. That's something we'll talk about today for a couple minutes. We know that there was an audio drama that a lot of people try to ignore that was supposedly canon in universe for Final Fantasy X, and that really pissed off a lot of fans with its storytelling. And we know that there has been a push in recent years to remake or remaster everything, with even Final Fantasy X and X-2 getting a remaster actually on the PS3, and then a fixed up version of that on the PS4 era of consoles. So we're going to take a look at this today for a couple minutes. I do have a question of the day for you though, which is, would you want to see the world of Spira revisited? Would you want to see Final Fantasy X revisited in any way, whether that is a remake, a new entry, prequel, sequel, remaster again, whatever? I'm just interested in your thoughts down below. Now, here's the thing with Final Fantasy X though. There are a lot of ignored Final Fantasy titles. Now, most mainline Final Fantasies, and I'm saying most, not all, have gotten some kind of remake in the past. A lot of the classic ones got things like DS remakes that then got brought to Steam, so those are 3D remakes of sprite-based games. There are a lot of remasters or re-releases of different classic ones, including the Pixel Remaster Collection, which you can argue amongst yourselves about the quality of. I know a lot of people like it and a lot don't. And when it comes down to it, Final Fantasy VII is one of the big Final Fantasies to be remade, not only as one game, but actually as multiple, in almost a different style, where it's not turn-based anymore. It's got elements of real-time action kind of mixed in. It's not like as fast as Kingdom Hearts or a lot of slashers like that, but it is faster. It's not just a wait for your turn and go turn-based. Now for me, I really love classic turn-based Final Fantasy. I don't expect every game to be that, but I am disappointed that it seems like every single modern game has moved away from it, especially when there were games like the Bravely Default games. There was Octopath Traveler, there's modern Pokemon. When people say turn-based doesn't work anymore, it's too slow, people don't have the patience for it, I point to a lot of modern games that do still use it that people love. So I find it a little odd that that argument comes up. I do think that's maybe a topic for another day, but it is a topic that does come up when it comes to Final Fantasy X. Final Fantasy X is even more strictly turn-based than a popular entry like 7. While 7 was also based off of this timed action gauge, 10 was pretty much just, okay, you want to wait and take your turn? The enemy will wait for you. This is just a straight-up turn-based game, almost like a tabletop game. And in that way, I thought it was very fun. A lot of classic Final Fantasies are like that, too. Now, when you are looking at Final Fantasy X, the question becomes, if you were to remake that, what would you do? Personally, I think they would move away from turn-based combat. And I think that that's too bad, because even though there are people who would say, well, why don't you just play the normal one if you want that old combat style, I would say this. The remasters of Final Fantasy X and X-2 weren't perfect. they actually did have some screw-ups in them. They did have some issues with facial features. Like, for example, if you actually look at emulated versions of those games from PS2 being played on PC, like in crystal clear HD, and then you look at the remasters with facial expressions, there are some actual details lost in translation when they tried to make it look better because of how the original game was made. So it's not something as simple as the remaster of the game just preserved it 100%, it's the perfect version, and if they remake it and change stuff, people should get over it. Whereas I would argue with Final Fantasy VII, even though it would be great to see a classic remaster, the port of the game is pretty much just fine. Like, the port of the classic Final Fantasy VII, they didn't really screw things up with it. It's just the game as it was. So that's kind of already something where when you're changing 7, I think that you've got leeway there because you didn't screw up the port along the way necessarily. But that said, when you're remastering 10, or I'm sorry, if you would remake 10, I think that that could be a potential issue. Now, all of that said, do I think that this means anything? Not really at the moment. Now, they actually talked about this a while ago. There was an interview with Tetsuya Nomura and Final Fantasy X director Motomo Toriyama, and this was for the Japanese gaming magazine Famitsu, which I'm going to leave all of these things in the description down below. There's going to be links to what I've talked about for the sources if you'd like to read it yourself. Down there as well is going to be our other channels, including our podcast style Let's Play channel where we play through games, and I'll get to some other stuff at the end that's going to be there too. But when they were talking about this, actually, and this was translated by RPG Site, Nomura said if we are to make 10-3, we somehow have a synopsis written by Final Fantasy X writer, and I'm going to screw up his name, Kazushige Nojima, and that it's sleeping right now, but the plot itself does exist. It was also stated by Toriyama here that while there was interest in returning to the world of Spira, there were challenges as well, stating the probability is not 0, but we are not in a phase where we can talk about it unless we have finished producing Final Fantasy VII Remake. So essentially there is a plot existing out there, and actually this was covered as well, I believe, by some YouTubers in the past. It'd be interesting to take a look at this in the future, maybe on this channel too, but there were ideas that floated around forever about a prequel for Final Fantasy X. Things like following Jecht or following Lord Braska or things like that, and kind of seeing what was going on with that journey, that pilgrimage. If I remember correctly, and I could be wrong, I believe one of the supposed issues with it, though, was that it wouldn't have as wide of a cast of playable characters because it was established that that pilgrimage was basically just, 3 people. So I'm pretty sure that that wouldn't be the direction they'd go, even though I would love to see it. But I'm interested to hear your comments down below. Like, do you think that there will be anything for this or not? I do think that it's pretty obvious, though, that with how excited everyone got, with this tweet actually getting over 10,000 likes at the time that I looked at it, and people talking about it, and the Square Enix, account responding to people and stuff like that, I think that it goes to show that there's still a massive passion for these characters. I grew up with these characters. I remember playing Final Fantasy X at my friend Andrew's house when I was 10 to 12 years old, and we would grind classic Final Fantasy games like 7 and 10, and we go around collecting the monsters for the arena, stuff like that in 10. So I have a lot of passion for this entry, but I do worry if you bring it back, if you change too much, you're going to also alienate a lot of classic fans, which did happen with 7 Remake series. I like it. I would still prefer at some point just a faithful recreation or remaster of Final Fantasy VII, but I don't know if we would ever see that. There's a lot of other Final Fantasies that have been ignored even more than the 10 series, and I do kind of wonder what the future holds. So let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. I hope you have a great day. There are a couple things I want to point your attention to. We have our own Discord server that is in the description. I have several other channels in the description as well. If you like Japanese stuff, like Japanese games, we actually cover a lot of anime and anime adjacent stuff over on my wife's channel, Magical Jill, where I usually am making videos too. And finally, we have an Amazon affiliate link. If you check that out, there are lists there that if you buy something using our affiliate links. We actually make money on, so we appreciate that for supporting our channel. Fortnite code, and we have our own store, cosmobunny.shop. Now, this is a store where we use coasters, keychains, trays, and more made out of resin that we actually create these different things so that we can preserve paper and art and things like that from past works. Now, these are things like comics, manga, magazines, and more that have been damaged, inserts, pamphlets, etc. What we do is we take those things, we transform them into something new with new life transformatively through art into these coasters, keychains, trays, and more. So those are great things that go to help support our channel. Discount code DJAY123. That's also our Fortnite code. Hope you have a great day. And as always, everyone, stay shui.